Welcome to On Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton, your host, joined by Rod Babers, former defensive back for the Texas Longhorns, now with On Texas Football. Rod, welcome in. This is a portal update, and we have some breaking news to share. Andrew Mukuba, the nickelback out of Clemson, 3-year starter for the Tigers, the last two at nickel, his first year as a safety. He is expected to be on campus for an official visit with Texas tomorrow. Mukuba had 42 tackles last year. 53 as a sophomore and 47 as a true freshman. He is a 3-year starter for a program, Rod, that has been among the nation's best on an annual basis. But, the Austin LBJ product now looking at teams a little closer to home, including the Texas Longhorns.
Yeah, and I think for Texas, right, this is a guy that can potentially fill multiple spots for you. You need a safety, of course. You got safeties that are leaving. Jaron Thompson. We talked about the 3 guys in the transfer portal as well, but Keaton Crawford also moving on. So there are going to be a lot of snaps at safety available, and he can fill that void for you, but also he can be a guy that can fill the void at nickel. We know Jahdae Barron is moving on to the NFL, so you need someone that can play nickel, which you guys know I think is the most important position potentially in the back 7 in the Big 12, and potentially for Texas is the nickel position. You got a guy that has such a versatile skill set, can do a lot of different things, and Mukuba actually fits that role. I'll also say this. I think he also fits what I think is going to be the future of evaluation in the secondary for Texas. I think they're going to prioritize versatility as one of their data points in evaluations for the secondary. Guys that can move around. I've talked about safeties that can also play nickel. We know I think Derek Williams can be a safety that can play nickel. Xavier Filsaime, we'll talk more about that. All right, as time goes on, I think he's a safety that can also play nickel for you. Jordan Johnson-Rubel coming in this recruiting class. He's a safety that can play nickel. If you have a safety that can play nickel, that means a safety that can cover. And goes back to the other data point. I think they're going to prioritize and emphasize coverage skills. And I've been saying it forever. And I think the coaching staff is finally starting to figure it out. You cannot coach coverage. You can't. Guys can get better at it. They can improve fundamentals. They can improve football IQ and their technique. But I think coverage specialist is something that is more innate. I think it's something that's programmed early within a football player. You can have good football players in your secondary that aren't coverage specialists. They do now. All right. Jaron Thompson is not a bad football player, but not a coverage specialist. Why is Derek Williams your best coverage safety and he's a freshman? Because you can't teach that skill. That's the same reason they're recruiting a guy like Colin Simmons. I also think you can't teach pass rushing ability. That's something that's innate usually. You can get better at it, but you want a guy that can be a high level coverage specialist or pass rusher. You got to recruit that trait. And I think now they're recruiting that trait at the safety position.
Here's the reality. He actually had his most passes defended yet this year. He had 6 passes defended, a pass breakup, so that's good for Mukuba. He's also interested in Oklahoma. Of course, Brent Venables, the former defensive coordinator at Clemson, very familiar with Mukuba as well. He's 6 foot, 195 pounds, and is a 3-year starter. One of the ties here to Texas is not only the fact that he's from Austin LBJ originally, Rod, but that his high school coach at Austin LBJ, Jamal Finner, is now the director of Texas high school football relations for the University of Texas. So there's some similarity there. And Mukuba even worked out with the team a lot last year.
Wow.
So in the offseason. So there's, look, there's a lot of intertwine here. It appears that Texas is a team that's under heavy consideration. Can I call Texas the favorites right now? I don't think we can do that until he gets on campus officially tomorrow, from what it looks like. And Mukuba, a young man out of Austin LBJ, not the only guy in the portal transfer the Longhorns are coveting. They've already brought in Trey Moore out of UTSA. I got an update on him for you guys. Young man had 14 sacks last year for Jeff Traylor's San Antonio UTSA school.
Yeah.
He is visiting. He had Alabama in the home yesterday, Ohio State in the home on Monday, visited Texas this past weekend. He will now go to Ohio State this weekend. He's also going to take a visit to Alabama. Now, when that Alabama trip happens is going to be interesting because this means it may prolong his recruitment past December 25th. We thought that Trey Moore, when I talked to earlier this week and talked to someone close to the situation, he was going to make a decision prior to Christmas. Now that may be on hold. Okay. Yeah. Not only Texas, but he's visiting Ohio State this weekend. He's got Bama likely setting up here in the next week or so, or 2 weeks past Christmas. He is a guy that Texas clearly is interested in and has already hosted on an official visit. Another guy, Rod, that I know you've watched a lot of is Matthew Golden, the wide receiver out of the University of Houston. His name officially went in the portal yesterday. Texas is expected to be very, very interested in him. Not only is he a receiver, but he's also a returner. You've watched him a lot. What do you think a guy like Matthew Golden brings to the game, brings to the Longhorns if he were to end up committing to Texas?
Yeah, I mean, he's a kick return specialist, right? He's a guy that's one of the best kickoff returners in the country. He probably would walk in as your best kickoff returner on campus, especially Keelan Robinson being gone. He can kind of fill that void for you. And we know Jeff Banks is a fabulous special teams coach, so he'd be able to maximize and weaponize him there. But if he can crack the circle of trust of wide receivers, we talk about this all the time with Sark. You know, Sark has a very tight rotation of wide receivers, usually 3 or 4 guys. And if you can crack that group, and I think he can at Texas, especially with Jay Witt moving on, X-Man moving on, A.D. Mitchell moving on, then he can be highly productive. It's honestly, if you're in that group with Sark, you're going to be productive because Sark's going to scheme you open. And he's shown the ability to do a really good job of being able to scheme wide receivers open. That's why he can recruit really good wide receivers because he's got that resume as a play caller and as an offensive mind. But if he can, I think he will. He'll fill that void at slot wide receiver for Texas. I think he can be way more productive as well in some of the specific personnel packages that Sark comes up with. Because he's such a dynamic ball carrier. That's why he's great at kickoff return. I could see Sark doing some of the things if he doesn't crack the circle of trust of wide receivers in the rotation. I could see Sark doing some of the same things he does with Keelan Robinson, with Matthew Golden, just making plays and packages specifically to get him in space with the ball, all right, with a chance to make dynamic plays happen because he's that explosive. That's Keelan Robinson for the most part. I mean, there are times when they put him in traditional roles within an offense. For the most part, he's never in a traditional role. He's in a 21 personnel package where they're motioning him out as a slot back or they're motioning him out as a wing back of some sort and getting him the ball in space. Matthew Golden has very similar explosivity as a ball carrier. If he's got the ball in space with about 3 or 4 yards schemed open in front of him, that's going to be trouble. And that's what Keelan Robinson is.
35.7 yards per kick return this past year, Rod. He only took back, listen to this, and you and I have talked about this before. He only had 9 kickoff returns all year, right? He took 2 of them back for touchdowns.
Absurd.
That's absurd. That's absurd. Hey, and plus he had the big kick return against Texas. I mean,
yeah, I'm with you. I'd tell him to return more kicks. Like, dude, I need you to return more kicks. You got 9 returns and 2 for touchdowns. And you're averaging 35. I'm sorry, sir. I need you to return more kicks. I need you to take more chances. And Jeff Banks will do it with him. Jeff Banks will be like, hey, man, 3 yards deep in the end zone, we got a new rule. If it's 5 yards more, take it. Just take it, bro. You got it. Go. We go.
Love it. Hey, yeah. I've got one more portal note, and I also have a high school recruiting note that I want to add. But Adam Lowy of the Lowy Law Firm is sponsored this show. We appreciate him each and every Wednesday. He sponsors our show. He's been helping injured Texans on the job or from car wrecks. If you've been injured, give him a shout and think you're due compensation. 512-280-0800 or visit him at loweylawfirm.com. That's Adam Lowy at loweylawfirm.com. Thanks for your sponsorship, Adam. All right, got to add this one, okay? Texas is also interested in former Atlanta Westminster tight end Holden Stays. Stays is a sophomore out of Notre Dame, has put his name in the portal. He's already expected to visit Tennessee, Washington, and Oklahoma. Jeff Banks recruited him out of high school. He ended up not obviously picking Notre Dame over Texas and a host of others, but the Longhorns are expected to try to get involved. Will they be too late to the party, or late's not the right word because they were on him from the start, but will they actually get an official visit? We do not know, but I can confirm the Longhorns interested in Holden Stays, a transfer out of Notre Dame. at this point. One last thing I want to mention in this update for us, Rod and I will be back around 4 o'clock on this channel to talk about Kobe Black, a young man out of Waco. Connolly will announce his commitment. We believe it's Texas, but, you know, it's recruiting. Things can happen, Rod. A&M could have come in at the last minute. Oklahoma State, where his brother plays, could be a factor as well. But Kobe Black, the number 44 overall player in the country, will announce his decision on Wednesday at around 4:30 at Waco Connolly High School. Rod, the whole idea here behind this update was talk about portal. Do you feel like these are the types of portal guys, when Sark talks about what he wants from the portal, that they're the kind of pieces that fit for him?
Yeah, I think, you know, because they've been so great in development, they can afford to be really selective in the portal. And Sark knows that. Now, they may still get 6-7 guys from the portal just because of the day and age we live in, right? The transfer portal, give it, then it take it away. Everybody's got to deal with that attrition. It's good attrition and bad attrition, depending on, you know, what the state of your program is. But I think Sark right now wants to make sure he gets guys that fit and that are compatible, personality-wise, disposition-wise, work ethic-wise with the program and where they are. And I think he wants to bring in guys that have already been productive, guys who have already proven themselves at the college level. So I like the way that Sark is approaching the transfer portal. I really do. I think he's doing a good job of that because early on, there was some guys he may have rolled the dice on that didn't work out. But I think he's starting to figure it out. By the way, everybody's learning on the job when it comes to the transfer portal. None of these coaches really haven't figured out just yet, because I think based on your situation, year to year is going to evolve. I think this year, Texas needs to prioritize 2 positions in the transfer portal, right? You got safety and wide receiver. Those are immediate concerns for you right now in the transfer portal. And then you can kind of, you know, basically piecemeal and supplement your roster with other guys from the transfer portal and other positions. But I think every year you're going to have basically an immediate urgent position that needs addressed via the transfer portal. And that's the beauty of it. But look at Oklahoma. That's also, you know, the ugly side of it. They lost couple of linemen, then had some linemen declare for the draft, and now they had 0 offensive linemen starters returning for next season. That's the downside. But the upside is, look at what Deion just did in 5 days in the transfer portal. He overhauled his whole O-line. You got 4 offensive linemen in the transfer portal, recruit another. So it's the gift and the curse, man. You can be on the downside of the ugly side, or you can be on the good side of it. And I think Sark's right now balancing it where he's in a sweet spot, where he's never overly dependent on it, and he doesn't necessarily ignore it like some coaches do. Like, I don't even like the transfer portal. It's not a right thing. No, I think he understands you need it, but also he doesn't want his program to be overly reliant on it, where every year he's desperate for guys in the transfer portal. It's a part of it. It's not it. Yes.
To your point. You know what I mean? It is. And that's one of the things Sark does really, really well as director of player personnel. Billy Glasscock, they do very, very well at combing it all together to make it mesh, as opposed to over-reliance on one idea over another. It all comes together, which I think is great. So just to back up, Andrew Mukuba visiting Texas tomorrow, we believe. That's the young man originally from Austin LBJ that started 3 years at Clemson, the last 2 at nickel. He could be a potential replacement for Jahdae Barron. Then we also have Texas very interested still in Trey Moore, but Moore now also saying he's going to be visiting Bama. That's the young man out of UTSA by way of Smithson Valley High School. Yeah. Holden Stays, the tight end. We're waiting to see what exactly happens there, as we are with Houston wide receiver Matthew Golden. We'll be back around 4 o'clock to talk about our young man, Kobe Black, who's announcing for, we think, keep your fingers crossed, the Longhorns. All right. For Rod Babers, special thanks to our sponsor, Adam Lowy, the Lowy Law Firm. For Rod Babers, I'm Bobby Burton. Hook 'em.
Hook 'em.